Okay, first off, let me just say that I've really enjoyed my experience in ESCI 302 this semester. Theory and practice in environmental education is not really what I was expecting, but I'm glad I was exposed to the philosophy in the scope of this class. I'm not going to lie, I had some resistance to certain aspects of this course, but as I learned by the end of the semester, the pedagogies used in this class expect some tension. So in that regard, I was really engaged in this class. On day one, the question was posed, what is the environment? And we were to go outside and take a picture. Having studied the environment in the past, I sort of realized it was at this moment that I may have to unlearn my view of the world for this class. My first real embodying moment came shortly after when we had to discuss our eco-literacy and environmental identity. Thinking about it, I was confused how I felt connected with the environment. I know lots about environments past, present, and future, but yet I was confused as to how I connect with it. And now here I am, 3 months later, after taking environmental education ESCI 302 class, I'm still confused how I connect with the earth. If we take care of it, it'll take care of us. The environment is much bigger than me. I'm just living in it. October 1st, we had Treaty Ed Camp, and being new to education, I haven't really been exposed to Indigenous ways of knowing or Native science or treaty education before. This is something I've taken great interest in, and even got 2 books coming in the mail, Bridging Cultures, Indigenous and Scientific Ways of Knowing Nature, and Native Science, Natural Laws of Independence, that I look forward to reading. I went to Treaty Ed Camp with high expectations and left a bit disappointed. From the very beginning of the opening ceremony, it was just awkward, and at times I felt we were treating First Nations as the elephant in the room. We were othering them. And then I read Raven and the Crow, and I was like, yes, this is exactly what I was talking about. It made my Treaty Ed Camp experience make sense. There's a lot of white Indian expert folks with degrees telling us what they want. When discussing colonialism or Indigenous issues, I think there's tension there that there doesn't need to be. This tension is obvious in Newberry's canoe pedagogy, where she quotes that we need to understand we are settler teacher candidates and therefore perpetrators of injustice. Also, at Treaty Ed Camp, I learned a theme that recurred for me throughout the semester that we didn't talk about in any of my classes, and this theme is the difference between thinking with your heart and thinking with your head. In Dr. Basil's seminar on Native Science, we watched the Democracy Now! Video with activist Wyona LeDuc. She had a strong message, but it lacked in facts and at times was hypocritical. She was speaking from the heart. Now fast forward a couple of weeks, in relation to my action learning group, I caught myself thinking with my heart and not my head. Justin Trudeau posed the carbon tax and Brad Wall didn't approve. I went home and read Brad Wall's Facebook post, and while reading it I was like, yeah, Trudeau's a jerk. He doesn't do anything good for the West. This carbon tax will ruin us. And then I was like, wait a minute. We have a pretty big carbon footprint, and personally this tax won't really hurt me. If used appropriately, it'll actually benefit our province in reducing GHG emissions. I did a complete 180, thinking from my heart to thinking with my head. And this theme of thinking with your heart, I find is common in education, whereas thinking with your head is more common in science. So as I go forward in environmental education, I think it is important to be aware of the difference and be aware of how it may affect my class. The creative journal process is what I had the most resistance to. I saw some of the creative journals other students did and was like, yeah, they look great. Some look like they came straight out of a professional scrapbook. But for me, I still do not understand the logistics of creative journals in a science education class. I understand the writing part, but the arts and crafts portion I found honestly to be a bit insulting. Insulting because I'm paying money to learn to become a science teacher, and here I am drawing pictures not really applicable to my career as an educator. I mean, I understand if it were a single creative journal, you do it once and embody the environment through a creative visual representation and reflection. Cool. But the repetition of 6 creative journals became redundant and slight. Suggestion would be an opt-out, where instead of doing 6 creative journals, we do like a 6-page research paper on environmental education pedagogy worth 10%. I feel that would be beneficial to the development of environmental educators, but also be applicable to the future career as teachers. If there's one thing that I think stands out most from this course is the difference in discourses. The difference in the feminist post-structuralist discourse and the dominant discourse sort of snuck up on me. It wasn't until reading M.J. Barrett's Making Some Sense of Feminist Post-Constructuralism that I even knew what discourses were. And that reading made our environmental education class make sense. I know that I have an objective view of science, which is the dominant hegemonic discourse for teaching in Canada, and this class exposed me to a subjective view. And there is tension between subjective science teachers and objective science teachers, as Barrett states. To not construct oneself as an objective evaluator is to risk condemnation by colleagues, administrators, parents, and students. As I move forward, I think it is going to be mindful of both objective and subjective teachings in environmental education. These different discourses really came out in our action learning group process, where we had a task to embody an environmental action. I was in a group with 2 other males who have backgrounds in science with strong objective discourses. It was tough getting started because we just wanted to dig into the facts and state numbers, but that's not really what this process was supposed to be about. But luckily we had an awesome group member who kept us together and on track, and I feel our action learning group, the Carbon Busters, really tied in well with course content and was a nice prequel to discussion on carbon tax in our class. And these discourses brings me to perhaps the overarching theme of this course, which is teaching is a political act. For a teacher, it is very important to be aware of this. Teaching is powerful, and as I've learned about teaching controversial issues, there's a fine line between education and propaganda. Now, I know that there is no such thing as an unbiased opinion, but I think you can still perceive that you are unbiased about situations by providing students with an opportunity to clarify their personal values, work out the consequences of those values, and decide an outcome for themselves. So all in all, I'm glad I had this experience in ESCI 302 and look forward to my 2 remaining ESCI classes, internship, and eventually working as a science teacher.